The ink is still wet on the reed brush in your hand. The papyrus before you is blank, not because you haven't begun, but because you've just awakened. Outside, the sun rises like a copper coin dropped into a bowl of golden sand. But here, within the limestone walls of the scriptorium, it is shadow and silence, save for the gentle hiss of your own breath, and the dry whisper of woven sandals pacing past. You do not know how you got here, only that you are dressed in linen, barefoot, with calluses not your own, and that someone expects you to remember what only the dead once knew. What would you write, if the past expected you to remember it? If this story lingers like ink on the tongue of memory? Tell me, could you carry 1,000 years with every line you write? Subscribe to Journey Further, and leave your own mark in the scrolls below. Could you live a life where your only voice was the one you gave to kings? The scent is the first thing that reaches you, earthy, brittle, ancient. The air is dry, yet filled with life long gone. Like breath trapped between walls, but never forgot how to listen. You do not wake in your own bed, but on a reed mat stretched tight over cold stone. There is no pillow, no familiar scent of soap or candle, only the musk of ink, dust and linen. Light pours in through a high slit in the wall, not golden, but chalky and slow. Like sun filtered through bone, tiny flecks drift within it, like the ashes of 1,000 forgotten words, still dancing toward heaven. You sit up, and your body creaks like an old door. Your hands, they are calloused, not the hands of the person you remember being. And in your lap, a folded scrap of linen, clean, pressed and waiting. A voice cuts softly through the hush. You're late. An old man stands at the threshold, skin like bark, eyes like still water. He holds out a reed pen, a calamus, its tip sharpened, its shaft worn down to the memory of countless mornings like this. You reach for it, though you do not know why. Your fingers curve around it like they've done it 1,000 times. It fits. And so begins your life in the House of Life, a place that smells of ink and silence, of authority and reverence, where papyrus cracks like footsteps in a chapel. You are not given time to ask where you are. You are told to sit and write. If this story has already marked your soul like ink to scroll, subscribe and drift with us again. Tell me, could you live a life where your voice was never spoken, only written? Your stool is simple, wooden, low to the ground, softened by time. It creaks beneath you as you lean forward to the desk, which is more of a stone ledge inset into the wall, covered in shallow carvings of flowers, spirals, and the shapes of birds in flight. Before you lies a sheet of papyrus, blank and waiting. The fibers shimmer in the light, stiff and golden, as if resisting your touch. Beside it is an ink palette, 2 basins, one for black, one for red. The red is for names, divine and deadly. The black is for everything else. The mundane, the endless lists, the harvest tallies, the prayers no one will ever read. You dip the pen into the black. The old man says nothing. He watches. Write your name, he commands. And his voice is not cruel, but carved, like stone that has already weathered every answer. You hesitate. Your name? What is it? Something stirs in the back of your mind. A sound, a syllable. But it floats just beyond reach, like the end of a dream slipping through your fingers. Your hand moves anyway, and the ink answers. You do not recognize the glyphs that form, but your hand does. It curves and flicks and pulls, as if guided by an older will. 3 marks, then another, and then a bird, mid-flight. You stare at what you've written, heart thudding with something close to fear. The old man nods. Good. You want to speak? You want to ask, who am I? Where am I? What does this mean? But no one here speaks without purpose. Words are precious. Out loud, they are too loud. Instead, you are handed another scroll, already marked. You are told to copy, not question. So you begin. Your pen scratches softly, the rhythm slow and deliberate. The ink sinks into the papyrus with a faint hiss. The way water finds the cracks in stone. The room is otherwise silent, save for the flutter of linen robes and the rustle of sandals on stone floors. There are others here, 6 scribes, each with their own corner of solitude, all older than you, faces etched with lines like maps, tracing long lives lived in service to memory. None of them look up. They are already gone, deep in the current of their work. You begin to notice how time moves differently here. It does not pass, but pulls. Like the Nile in its slowest season, swelling behind unseen gates. You write, and the world outside fades. You write, and something within you begins to stir. The scroll you copy speaks of offerings, of a temple long buried, of a pharaoh whose name you do not recognize. And yet, somehow it aches like a lost friend's. You trace his name in red. The ink shines. You finish the scroll, and another replaces it. Hours pass. Or days. The sun shifts outside the slit of the wall, but no one marks it. You remember now. You open your mouth, but nothing comes. Not even breath. He studies you, and says simply, "Then keep writing." You are left alone with the papyrus, the ink, the pen that feels more like an extension of your own soul than a tool. You realize, slowly, that no one here has spoken more than a few words. You haven't heard laughter, or anger, or song. There is no fire, no story told around a hearth, only the steady exhale of breath between symbols. Here, memory lives in silence, and silence in ink. You write through the evening. Your fingers stiffen. The tip of your reed wears down to a fray, then is replaced, and still you write. But because somehow it feels like if you stop, you'll vanish. Like breath too soft to disturb the dust. The walls press in, gentle but firm. Papyrus cracks like dry branches. And the only voice you have is the one that lives in the lines you leave behind. Night falls gently in this place, not as darkness, but as quiet. A deeper kind of stillness, like cloth drawn over the eyes of the world. The scriptorium does not sleep, but it slows. Lamps flicker, low and golden, burning oil with the scent of pressed olives and forgotten gardens. Sleep comes in short, obedient shifts. Meals pass without conversation. The rhythms of this life are tidal, measured, invisible, sacred. But on your fourth night, if it is indeed the fourth, you meet the man who watches the sky. He is already seated when you arrive in the upper chamber, where scribes gather to transcribe the calendars, the rituals, the alignments of heaven with earth. He wears a robe so faded it seems the color of dust, stitched with faint stars that shimmer only when the lamp moves. You are told to assist him. You bow, though he does not look at you, only upward, through a square cut into the ceiling, where the stars hang sharp and innumerable. He does not ask your name. Instead, he says, "We are here to chase the silence between seconds. You do not understand. Not yet." He moves slowly, like a shadow, every gesture precise. He lays out a scroll, dark with age, curling at the corners, and unrolls it carefully, revealing columns of symbols, star glyphs, numbered days, sigils of deities that mark the constellations like fingerprints on the sky. "You will copy these," he murmurs, voice low, like a stone turning underwater. Not just the words, the pattern, the breath between them. You dip your brush in black ink. The texture is grainier than you remember, laced with grit from river silt. It clings to the papyrus, refusing haste. Every line must be earned. As you write, he begins to speak. They say time moves forward. That day's a river. But rivers bend. They flood. They disappear beneath sand, only to return. We record the floodings. We record the new moons. But these, he lifts a knotted finger to the stars. These are older than our gods. We do not measure them. They measure us. His name, you later learn, is Amenhotep. Not a priest. Not exactly. Not a servant either. A watcher. A listener. He has spent 40 seasons mapping the movements of the stars, whispering prayers to Seshat, the goddess of writing and wisdom. Each night, he records what rises and what fades. He notes how long the stars remain visible. He charts how they return. Always, they return. He tells you of Sopdet, the star that heralds the Nile's flood, of Sa, the soul of Osiris, of the gods who rest in the firmament, sleeping with their eyes open. He does not laugh. He rarely blinks. But when he speaks of the sky, his voice turns soft, like wax warmed by a hearth. "Do you see them?" he asks one evening. "The story's waiting to be written." You look upward. The stars do not twinkle. They pulse, slow, deliberate. Ancient. They seem almost to breathe. You nod. He does not smile, but something in him shifts. Good. For weeks, you sit at his side. You learn that each mark matters. A single wrong curve in a glyph can shift a season, dishonor a god, misalign the spirit of a festival. There is no room for vanity, only reverence. Writing is not remembering, he says one night. It is creating what must be remembered. That thought chills you, because if it is true, if what you write becomes, then your brush carries not just ink but fate. You begin to notice it. When you write a name, you feel the weight of it. When you describe a rising star, you sense it rising within you. And when you write a day that has not yet come, you dream of it. One morning you pen a prophecy. You do not know why. It flows from you before you can stop it. The flood will come early. The sky will bleed. The child of silence will be called to speak. You hide it. Fold it into the spine of a discarded scroll. That evening you confess it to Amenhotep. He does not scold you. Instead he closes his eyes and whispers, "What we write becomes." It is a truth he has carried too long. A truth others have dismissed. But now he sees it in you. He gives you a new ink, made from ground lapis, deep as twilight. This, he says, is for what must never be forgotten. And for the first time since you arrived, you feel not like a scribe, but like a vessel, a mouth for the stars to speak through. When you walk back to your chamber that night, the sky is bright with fireflies, but you realize, slowly, they are not fireflies. They are reflections, echoes, words written long ago, written now, written again. The stars have seen your hand, and they are listening. The door to the storeroom is low, made of warped wood bound by copper hinges. It creaks when you press it open, exhaling the scent of ancient things, smoke, rot, and something older still, like dried blood in sun-baked cloth. The corridor behind you is hushed, the scriptorium still murmuring in its steady rhythm of brushes scratching and scrolls sighing. But here, the air grows heavy. You step into the dark. This is where the ink is born, not in the mind or in the prayer, but in the bowl, in the crushing of stone and the grinding of minerals, in the soot of sacrificed resin and the dust of river clay. The tools are simple, mortars of alabaster and basalt, a pestle worn smooth, and rows of pigment jars that shimmer like forgotten jewels even in the half-light. You are not alone. A man tends the pigments, younger than Amenhotep, older than you. His robe is smeared with reds and blacks and rusts, like a battlefield remembered in silence. He does not introduce himself, only gestures to a pestle and speaks with eyes lowered. Charcoal, ochre, powder them fine. You obey. The charcoal crumbles first, light as ash, staining your fingers with soot that won't wipe clean. The ochre is stubborn, grinding slower, releasing a scent of dry stone and sweat. You mix them with water pulled from a narrow jug. Cool, metallic, sacred. Not water from a well, but from the Nile itself, drawn during the waxing moon, when spirits are calm. As you mix, you notice something tucked beside the bowls. A bundle, wrapped in old linen. You reach for it, hesitant. The pigment tender does not stop you. You unfold it carefully, breath held. Inside are tools, older than the ones you've seen in the scriptorium. A reed, blackened and warped. A quill from a vulture's wing. A flake of obsidian, jagged at the edge. A single tooth, human, yellowed, bound in thread. You look up, and the man watches. They used whatever would mark, he says. His voice is flat, as though reciting a formula. When papyrus was scarce, when war drained the fields, they used skin once, leather, bark, bone. You swallow. He turns away. They wrote anyway. The implication hangs in the air, like a veil of flies. Writing was not always clean, not always ceremony. And scroll. Sometimes it was desperation, defiance, survival. You look again at the tooth, and wonder whose voice it once held. The ink you've made is thick, almost too thick. You add more water. The brush cuts its surface, dark and swirling, like storm clouds rolling over sand. It smells of ash and earth. He hands you a parchment, cracked at the edges. Write, he says. But what? You let your hand guide you. You write a hymn, a prayer to Thoth, god of wisdom, who gave speech to the silent and meaning to the wind. The words flow fast, too fast. your hand hot with motion. The ink clings, beads, sinks. The parchment seems to accept it greedily. When you finish, you lean back, heart quickened. The man takes it gently, reads it without sound. His eyes narrow, just slightly. Then he lays it aside. You've done this before. You almost speak, almost say that you haven't, that this is new, that you don't remember anything before the day you woke. But something in you knows. Something in your fingers. Something in the ache behind your ribs. He returns to his jars. You'll be assigned ink duty again. And just like that, you are dismissed. But you don't leave right away. You study the jars, reds the color of dried blood, yellows like desert bones, a blue made from crushed lapis that glows even in shadow. These are not just pigments, they are voices, they are moods, and you begin to wonder, what else has been written not in ink but in something more lasting? What scrolls lie hidden, etched in limestone? What names carved into the backs of statues too faint for the eye but still humming with presence? That night, as you lie on your mat, the scent of charcoal still clinging to your skin, you dream not of stars but of hands, thousands of them, all reaching, all writing, some with reeds, others with bone, and you wake with a phrase still echoing in your skull. We are made of what we remember. But what if the memory is not yours? What if the ink in your hand was never meant to write prayers, but warnings? Would you still write? Would you still become a scribe? Would you still be? Morning arrives, not with song, but with dust. The air tastes of it, fine, pale, bitter, caught in the folds of your linen, and under your tongue. Somewhere outside, the Nile stirs in its patient rhythm, but here, the world begins again with silence. The scriptorium breathes with slow purpose, brushes are lifted, dipped, pressed to parchment. The sound is soft, repetitive, the hush of memory being shaped into permanence. You take your place without instruction. Already your fingers know the position. Already your wrist finds the weight of the reed pen without thought. But today, your thoughts are not your own. You're still held by the dream of ink made from bone, of voices unspoken, of memory shifting like sand beneath your step. That is when you notice him, a boy, younger than you, perhaps 12 summers, but not fragile. His eyes are bright, restless. His face is round, still soft with childhood, but his hands are stained with ink. He sits at a corner table, alone, copying what looks like a simple litany, but his grip is careful, his focus absolute. You nod politely. He nods back. Then you speak. A greeting, soft, simple. He doesn't respond. You try again, and again he says nothing. Just looks at you, not confused, not offended, only quiet. Then he raises his hands. Gestures. Fingers weaving quickly, precisely, gracefully. Not random motion, but language. He is mute. He cannot speak, but he can listen and write. He takes a scrap of parchment and scribbles something quickly. The glyphs are practiced. A single sentence. The ink listens. So do I. You stare at it for a long moment, then smile. In the days that follow, he finds you again and again, always at your table, always with a spare reed, a shared scroll. He never interrupts, only watches your hand move, nods at the glyphs you form, occasionally correcting you with a tilt of his head or a pointed look. He is not cruel, he is not superior, he is precise. He carries a small leather satchel, too worn for someone so young, filled with fragments of old scrolls, scraps, others discarded, torn corners, half-phrases, faded invocations. He treats them like treasure. One day he opens it for you, lays them out in a quiet fan, and lets you read. You see names, pieces of prayers, questions without answers. One reads, "Who writes the name of the voiceless?" Another, "If I cannot speak, am I still heard by the gods?" You look at him, and he only tilts his head, a question in his eyes, as if to ask. Well, he teaches you to listen in new ways, not with your ears, but with your sight. The twitch of a brow, the pause before he lifts his hand, the way he breathes in when reading a line of text, as if drawing it into himself like incense smoke. One evening he brings you a gift, a scroll, wrapped in linen. You unwrap it carefully. The script is small, elegant, purposeful, a prayer to Thoth, god of knowledge, lord of writing, master of all that is recorded and all that must remain hidden. But the lines are not copied, they are original. This child, this boy with no voice, has written his own liturgy. I have no voice, but still I speak. My words lie curled in the curves of glyphs. My silence is a scroll unrolled. May Thoth hear what I cannot say. The lamp sputters beside you as you read it again and again, heart rising in your throat. You realize it is not just a prayer, it is a declaration, a testament, a rebellion against silence itself. You bow your head, not to him, but to the enormity of what he has created. You spend the next day writing beside him in quiet companionship. No questions, no lessons, just ink and breath and time. And though no one speaks, you feel something settle into place, like a stone at the base of a monument, unseen but necessary. Later, as the stars rise, he taps your shoulder and points upward. There, in the sky, hangs a single bright light, a planet, perhaps, or a sign. He looks at you, then draws a small circle with his finger in the air, slowly, deliberately. The beginning of a story. You nod, understanding. Then he presses your hand once, lightly, and walks away into the dusk. You don't know his name. He never gave it, but you've already written it in your heart. It is a name for those who carry words in silence, who carve their thoughts into air, who speak through scroll and sign and stillness. He has no voice, but he has taught you how to listen. There are doors within the house of life that do not open with keys. They open with time, with trust, with the silent agreement that what lies within them is not to be spoken of lightly. One morning, perhaps it is morning, though the light in this place is always dim and indirect, you are summoned without a word. A junior scribe taps you on the shoulder and points. That is all. You follow. Through the western corridor, past walls thick with dust and carvings faded by 1,000 fingers, down steps so narrow your shoulders brush the stone. The air grows cooler, but heavier. You feel it in your lungs, the weight of time. At last, you reach a door, wooden, like the rest, but carved with symbols you do not recognize. Not hieroglyphs. Something older. The door is opened for you. Inside is not a room. It is a world. The library, but not a library like any you've known. No towering bookshelves. No neat rows. This place breathes. Scrolls are stacked in spirals, hung in slings of linen from the ceiling, buried in wicker baskets, tucked between statues, nestled beneath slabs of limestone. The scent is intoxicating, a blend of papyrus, cedar oil, beeswax, and something else, something like breath held too long. A man waits for you. His robe is simple, his head shaved. He wears no jewelry, no paint, no mark of office. But his eyes are sharp as obsidian, and twice as deep. You will restore a scroll, he says. He leads you to a table beneath a shaft of filtered light. There, unrolled carefully between 2 weights of alabaster, lies a single sheet of papyrus, brittle, browned by time. Cracks run through its surface like veins. The name at the top makes your pulse quicken. Doze, a pharaoh of legend, a name you studied as a child, a man who reigned before the pyramids had hardened in the sun, before ink had truly learned to sing. You stare at the scroll. Then it begins. Not the restoration, the remembering. Images flash, not in the room, but behind your eyes. You see a storm over desert sands, a voice shouting commands in a language both familiar and unknown. You see feet bleeding on stone steps, offerings laid in haste, a crown dropped, a face in shadow. You blink, and the scroll lies still. The room is unchanged, but your breath is short. Your fingers tremble. The librarian watches, not with pity, but patience. Memory clings to ink, he says, and ink never dies. You begin your work. You use a brush finer than a hair. You dab moisture into the cracks, stitch fibers together with sap and care. As you touch the glyphs, you feel something. Not voices, not words, more like intention, emotion left behind, pressed into every curve. Fear, pride, longing. The scroll is not a record, it is a wound, and now you are its healer. Hours pass, or days. You no longer know. The light above you shifts from golden to copper to grey. Still you work. You have forgotten thirst, forgotten time. There is only the scroll, and what it asks of you. When you finish, it lies before you like a body at peace. Mended, not perfect, but whole. You step back, and that's when you feel it, not see it. The breath. The room inhales. It is not wind. There are no open windows, no gaps, but the scroll, the shelves, the very walls. They move. A slow shift. A settling. As if everything here is alive. Just barely. Just enough. The librarian nods. The library remembers, he says. But it chooses who may remember it. You ask, carefully, how old the oldest scroll is. He gestures vaguely. Some say before dynasties, before speech, before even the gods knew their own names. You believe him, because something here watches. Something here waits. He guides you back to the door. You may return, he says, but only when called. You leave the room, heart beating louder than your footsteps. And though you walk in silence, though no one follows, you feel the scroll you restored watching you, not with eyes, but with breath. The morning is thick with heat, even in the shaded halls of the scriptorium. The stone beneath your feet is warm, and the linen at your neck clings with damp salt. Outside, the cicadas sing their endless song, shrill, pulsing, eternal. But within these walls, it is not noise that troubles you, it is absence. You are summoned again. Not to the library, not to the ink chamber, this time to the tomb. The stoneworker finds you in the corridor, and places a clay tablet in your hands, a blank one, freshly carved. The surface is pale, smooth, untouched, like the skin of a newborn child, but feels too clean, too empty. He does not speak much. Only tells you the name of the deceased. Anen, a nobleman of the royal court, recently dead. His tomb is not yet sealed, his body not yet disturbed by time. You are to inscribe his name, nothing more, nothing poetic, just the name, to fix him in eternity. It should be simple, but nothing is. You arrive at the tomb before dawn. The entrance is carved into the hillside, half buried in shadow. The workers have left, their tools scattered. You are alone. You step inside. The air is thick, warm, heavy. It presses against your lungs, not with scent, but with silence. The walls are bare. No painted murals, no offerings. Just the slab at the center, white limestone, cold as untouched memory. You unwrap your kit. You place the tablet upon the slab. You dip your stylus in red ink, the sacred kind, reserved for names. You poise your hand, and nothing happens. Your hand trembles, the ink beads. The stylus refuses to mark. You press harder. Nothing. The red pools and slides, but no line remains. You try black ink. You switch reeds. You whisper a prayer. You trace the letters again and again, and still the stone remains untouched, as if the name itself refuses to be born. Panic flickers. You look around. You see nothing, but you feel watched. Not by eyes, not quite, but by presence. You step back, breathe. The room is still. Too still. You place your tools down. You sit. Hours pass. You begin to hear it, a whisper, not spoken but scraped, like stone grinding against stone. You close your eyes, and you dream. The dream is dry. Dust and wind. A boy's cry. A woman's hand reaching through reeds. Then, silence. A blank wall. When you open your eyes, the stone remains untouched. But the tablet, the one you brought, is cracked. A single hairline fracture running across its center. You leave the tomb without writing the name. The workers say nothing when you return, but their eyes avoid yours. The scriptorium accepts you back without question. You sit at your usual place. You write lines you do not remember starting. That night, your dreams return. You walk through corridors of stone, empty tombs, blank walls. You hear a voice, not loud, not cruel, just forgotten. I had a name. This time you bring no ink, only a brush, dipped in water. You kneel, you whisper the name, Anne. Then you trace it with the wet brush across the stone, softly, reverently. You pick up your stylus. You write the name in red. This time, it holds. The ink sinks into the stone. The letters gleam like blood beneath the sun, and the room exhales. You are not thanked, not warned, not marked. But when you leave, the cicadas fall silent for a moment, and for the first time in days, the silence feels clean. It begins with a flash of movement, white against the green-gold shimmer of the Nile's banks. You are walking back from the tombs, the sun beginning its slow descent, when you see her standing by the water near the reeds, a figure cloaked in linen so pale it nearly vanishes in the brightness. She is still, as if waiting for something, or someone. You pause beneath the date palms, half in shadow. The air buzzes with flies and light, the scent of warm mud rising from the banks. But in that moment the world narrows, the river hushes, the cicadas dim. Only she remains. She lifts her head and looks at you. Her face is quiet, soft, neither young nor old, skin like honeyed sand, eyes unreadable. She does not wave, does not call out, only watch. You take a step forward, just one, and in that instant, she turns, walks into the reeds, and disappears. You blink. The place she stood is empty. Only the wind remains, moving gently through the rush. You tell no one. The next day, you return at the same hour. You make no excuse. You simply walk toward the river, feet dragging through dust, sandals loose, a strange compulsion guiding you, and there she is again, standing in the same place. She is weaving. Thin strands of linen pass through her fingers, faster than the eye can follow. She hums a tune, or perhaps it is only the rustle of leaves. You dare to speak. Who are you? She glances up and says in a voice so soft it nearly blends with the wind, "Don't forget me." Then she is gone. The words haunt you. That night, you write them. Slowly, in the margins of your scrolls, on the inside of your wrist. You hide them beneath ritual chants and grain records, threading them through your work like a whisper. Don't forget me. But no one else sees her. The other scribes pass by the Nile's edge without pause. The workers speak only of grain and stone, so you begin to search. Quietly, in the archives you look for her. You read names of priestesses, midwives, water-bearers. You search the festival lists, the temple offerings. You find a woman named Anhai, who wove linen for the temple of Khnum, but she lived over 200 years ago. You find another, Sahidi, the scribe's daughter who drowned at the river's bend. Her name is struck through, erased. Each scroll leads only to another dead end. Another silence. Until one evening, when you return from the scriptorium and find something on your stool, a cloth, folded, stained with ink. You lift it gently. It smells of crushed lotus and old dust. The pattern is familiar, the same weave the woman used, tighter in the center, looser near the edge. You press it to your chest and feel something stir. A memory? No, an ache. The next morning she is not there. You return every day for a week, 10 days. The reeds sway, the river hums. But she does not come again. And yet something in you has changed. You begin to see her in other places, in the curve of a glyph, in the rhythm of a prayer, in the way a strand of linen slips through your fingers as you bind a scroll. She is everywhere and nowhere. You ask Imenhotep, cautiously, if people ever vanish from history. He looks at you, eyes half shut. We vanish when we are no longer spoken. What if they return, you ask? In visions, in dreams. He says, nothing. But later, he leaves a scroll on your desk. An old legend. A nameless woman who wandered the edge of the Nile, seeking someone to remember her. No ending is given. Only one line at the bottom. Some stories return when they are needed. That night, you write her story. You give her a name. Not Sahedi, not Anhai, but one that feels true, even if it's only yours. You write it in red, fold it into a scroll, seal it with wax, and place it in the house of life, among 1,000 other names. Whether she was a ghost, a dream, or a fragment of memory, you do not know. Yet you remember her. And now, perhaps, she will never be forgotten again. The morning is thick with heat, though the sun has barely risen. The river looks strange today, too still, not in the way of peace, but of tension, a hush before a scream. You stand at the edge of the scriptorium's terrace, looking toward the horizon where the Nile curves out of sight. Something feels wrong. The water moves, not forward, as it always has. not with its usual languid, southern grace, but backward, against its current. You watch as boats anchored along the bank drift the wrong way, pulled as if by invisible hands. Shouts rise from the harbour, priests emerge from temples, a mother drops her basket of dates. You hear the dull thump of the fruit hitting the earth, and then the silence that follows, stunned, suspended, immense. The Nile is running backward. You are summoned immediately, not to the river, not to the temples, but to the library. The librarian waits for you at the threshold. His eyes are wide, rimmed with sleeplessness. There is precedent, he says. There must be. You are handed a list of dynasties, a map of reigns, a stack of scrolls so old their corners break off, like ash beneath your fingers. Your task, to find a record, a hint, a moment in which the river reverses. You begin. Hours pass, maybe longer. The light from the narrow window shifts and bleeds. The scrolls flake and resist. But then you find it. One fragment, unmarked, no date, no author, just a line. The flood turned in its cradle, and the dead stirred in the west. You read it again. The glyphs are familiar. The spacing, the rhythm. Your heart stumbles. It is your hand. Or, it looks like your hand. The curl of the scissors. The length of the ovals. The way the line curves back slightly at the end. You've seen it before, in your own scrolls, in your own writing. But this scroll is centuries old. How is it possible? You run your fingers along the edge. There is no signature, no seal. But something in your chest tightens, as if your body remembers before your mind does. You bring the fragment to the librarian. He squints, reads, frowns. Where did you find this? You point to the basket it lay in, one of hundreds. He nods. Take it. Copy it. Add it to the record. We will present it to the priests. You hesitate. Should we wait? He looks at you then, really looks. No, he says. What is written must be known. You return to your table. The fragment lies before you like a riddle. You unroll fresh papyrus. Dip your brush. You copy the line slowly, carefully, then you add a second line, not from the original, but from the dream you had last night, the one you had not spoken of, not even to yourself. The stars fall in reverse, and the scribe walks backward into memory. When you finish, the ink glistens, and in the reflection of the wet letters, you see your own face, but older, worn, and behind it, a flicker of something else. A shadow. Watch. You blink. It's gone. You dry the scroll, deliver it, leave the library with hands that will not stop shaking. Outside, the Nile still flows the wrong way. People whisper. Some pray, some flee. The temple bells ring at noon, not to summon but to warn. And through it all, one thought repeats like a drumbeat in your skull. You've seen this before. Not just the words, but the day, the panic, the feeling. It is a memory that does not belong to you. Or perhaps it does. Perhaps time is not a river. Perhaps it too runs backward when it must. The smoke curls slowly as if unwilling to rise. It lingers low to the ground, clinging to your robe, your hands, your throat. It carries with it the scent of burning myrrh, dried dates, fig oil, and salt, the offerings of remembrance. Today is the festival of the forgotten, though no one says the name aloud. Not in full. It is a day wrapped in linen, bound in silence, and carried gently into the hands of the gods. You were chosen, not by rank or favour, but by rotation, or perhaps by something older, something deeper. You are to transcribe the names, all of them, the ones no longer spoken, the ones found etched on broken jars, on splinters of coffin wood, on crumbling walls in tombs that never received a second visit. They come to you in fragments. A chipped shard handed to you by a gravedigger, a child's toy wrapped in linen, a necklace found beneath collapsed stone. Each object bears the ghost of a name, sometimes scratched with a dull knife, sometimes painted with fingers in faded ochre. You record them one by one. The scribe's table has been moved into the courtyard today, beneath the sycamore trees that rustle in the mid-morning wind. The scroll before you is long, clean, waiting. You write the first name, Naktu, a child, perhaps, a servant. No one remembers. Then another, Meheru, Peket, Ipetis. The names come like a tide, each one different, each one brief. You are told not to embellish. No stories, no titles, only names. The festival is for memory, not glory. Priests move among the low altars, sprinkling beer and milk, laying down bread so dry it cracks in their hands. Musicians do not play, dancers do not dance. This feast is not for the living. You are given a small bowl of lentils and a flat cake. You eat with your fingers, quietly. No one speaks. Not because of ritual, but because there is nothing to say. You notice a woman nearby, her skin weathered, her braids streaked with grey. She cradles a tiny bundle. She unwraps it gently, a doll, carved from bone, its limbs worn smooth. She places it on the altar, kisses it once, and turns away. You do not know the name she came to remember, but you write it anyway. Not from her lips, from the gesture, from the silence. You write, "She who was loved." Later, a boy appears, no more than 10, with a piece of broken pottery. He hands it to you without a word. Carved into the clay, crooked and shallow, is a single glyph, the symbol for sun. You write, "Rhea." The boy nods and walks away. Your scroll fills slowly, not with narrative, but with weight. Each name a stone, each line hand reaching through time. As the sun climbs overhead, the heat presses down like a memory too long carried. The priests begin the final rite. They burn strips of papyrus, ones too damaged to keep, found buried in rubble, ink barely visible. The smoke that rises is thin, trembling. One priest chants, "Let these names be known. Let the wind carry them. Let the gods remember what men forgot." You close your eyes, and you see them. Faces without definition, eyes searching, hands outstretched. Not begging, not accusing, just present. You open your eyes, and you write. Not names now, but a single phrase. "We saw you." You do not sign it. You do not claim it. But you know in some quiet part of your chest that someone will read those words one day. Someone like you. And they will know, even if only for a moment, that silence was never truly empty. That even the forgotten feast again, and that ink, more than fire, remembers. It is barely dawn when they come for you. The sky is still the colour of unburned charcoal, and the birds have not yet broken the silence. You are seated on the floor of the scriptorium, half asleep, copying the final line of a harvest decree, when the shadows stretch across your desk. 3 men stand before you, temple guards, sandaled feet, gold-trimmed skirts, faces blank as uncarved stone. One holds a scroll, another holds a sealed summons. "You are to come," the tallest says. No explanation, no farewell. You rise. Your limbs are stiff from hours of writing. Your hands smell of ink and wax. You do not pack your belongings. They will not be needed. You follow them through corridors you've never walked before, corridors that descend beneath the scriptorium, past chambers filled with old statues, offerings long since withered, and shelves of scrolls too sacred for common hands. The air grows cooler, drier. The silence shifts, no longer comforting but sharp. Outside, a litter waits. 4 oxen, 8 runners. You are not permitted to speak. The journey to the palace is slow, ceremonial. The roads are cleared ahead of you. Commoners step aside without protest. You pass markets, temples, gardens, and beyond that, the walls of the palace itself, rising like the bones of the gods. Its gates are bronze, sun-polished, unmarked. You are led through halls that glow with filtered light and shadow. Incense coils above your head in thin, wandering ribbons. The floors are inlaid with lapis and obsidian. The air smells of cedar, dust, and something deeper, power. You do not see the pharaoh. No one sees him, but you hear his voice. It comes from behind a veil of linen, so fine it seems to ripple with every breath. It is a voice like stone smoothed by centuries, low, slow, unmistakable. "You will write," it says. The high scribe steps forward, a tall man, face powdered and motionless. He does not look at you. He reads from a second scroll. There is to be a decree, a reshaping, a name removed, a god raised, a law remembered. You nod. You do not ask questions, not here. The high scribe leads you to your chamber, not a cell, Not quite a room, a space carved from silence. There is a desk, a brush, ink, and a scroll already waiting. You are to stay until it is written. The door closes behind you, and for a moment you sit in the silence, listening, not to voices, but to the feeling pressing against your ribs. It is not fear, not exactly. It is the weight of knowing that what you write now will be read by thousands, will be carved in stone, will be spoken in temples. You dip your brush, you write the first line, by the breath of the throne. So it shall be. Each glyph must be flawless, each stroke deliberate. There is no room for hesitation, no space for correction. You write the name of the god to be raised, one you have never worshipped, one you have never even written. But now, it will live in every mouth, every prayer. You erase another, a name you knew as a child, a god now cast down, forbidden, unspoken. You hesitate before the final stroke, but your hand moves anyway, because that is the way of scribes. You do not command the world. You translate it. You preserve it. You reshape it. When asked, when ordered, when history demands, by evening the scroll is finished. You place your seal upon the edge, not your name, but your mark, a simple glyph. The eye. Watch. You leave the chamber. No one speaks. But as you walk through the quiet halls, you understand the truth whispered long ago. What is written becomes. And now, your words are no longer yours. They belong to the gods, and the crown, and time. The palace is quiet, even in daylight. No servants murmur in corners. No sandals echo in the halls. It is as though the stone itself listens, and nothing dares disturb its ear. You are kept in a separate wing now, not a prisoner, not quite honored, watched, mostly. Days pass in solemn rhythm. Each morning, a scroll arrives. You copy it. Each evening, it is taken. You are not told where your words go, nor who reads them. You are a vessel now, a hand through which the unseen speak, until one afternoon, when a knock comes to your door, not the tap of a guard or a priest. This is softer, more human. The door creaks open. A man steps inside. He wears no paint, no jewels. His robe is plain, but the way he carries it, the way his eyes avoid the light, tells you everything. He is a scribe, like you, or perhaps not like you at all. He closes the door behind him, sits, says nothing for a long time. Then, I write what no one else is allowed to. His voice is quiet, deliberate, stripped of ornament. You say nothing. You wait. He produces a scroll from his sleeve. It is sealed not with wax but with a strip of black thread. He unrolls it slowly. These are names, he says. Names removed from record. Men erased, women forgotten, towns that no longer exist, gods that displeased the throne. You scan the glyphs. They are faint, as if afraid to be read. This scroll, he continues, must never be found. But it must exist. You meet his gaze. Why show me? He leans back. His eyes glint with something between weariness and amusement. Because you still believe ink is truth. He lifts another scroll. This one thicker, heavier. It bears your handwriting. One of your royal decrees. I've been assigned to clean your work, he says. To soften it. To adjust. To erase what should not have been written. Your breath catches. You alter my words? No, he says. I correct them. You stare at him. He rolls both scrolls carefully, tucks them into his robe. I'm called the left hand of silence, he says. No one knows my name. That's how it must be. He rises, moves to the door. Before leaving, he pauses. We are not memory, he says. We are erasure. Then he's gone. You sit alone, the room suddenly colder. Your hands tremble, not from fear, from recognition, because now you understand. You are not the last word. You are a layer, a veil. Beneath you, others write. Others conceal, and above you, others decide. The next day, your scroll is returned, but there's a line missing. A name changed. The ink is identical. The glyphs nearly perfect. But it is not your hand. And when you hold the scroll to the light, you see a faint shadow beneath the ink. A name that once was. Now gone. The message comes before dawn, delivered by a runner, breathless and pale. A new tomb has been uncovered. A small one. Unmarked. The sands shifted in the night, revealing its entrance like a wound, suddenly opened. You are summoned not to write history, but to witness it. By midday, the sun hangs heavy and low, casting harsh light across the excavation site. Workers dig carefully, their fingers wrapped in linen, voices lowered to murmurs. The tomb lies shallow beneath the sand, nestled against a broken cliff face. A slab of limestone leans against its mouth, cracked in two, as if it resisted being opened. Inside, the air is cool, stale. You enter last, stepping over a tangle of roots and rock. The chamber is narrow, no more than a sleeping space carved into the earth. At its center lies a small sarcophagus, unpainted, unadorned, child-size. The workers step aside. A priest mumbles a protective verse. Then, gently, the lid is lifted. Inside lies a body wrapped in faded linen, curled as if in sleep. A girl, no older than 5. Her limbs are thin, her hands clasped. There are no amulets, no gold, no marks of status. Only 2 things rest beside her: a wooden doll, one eye missing, and a folded strip of linen, ink-stained. You take the linen, unroll it. It bears a single word, no name, just beloved. The priest instructs you to write the record. You kneel beside the tomb, place your parchment on the cool earth, dip your brush. But when you try to write her name, you pause. There is none. You glance around. No inscriptions on the walls. No tomb title. Nothing carved into the stone. Who was she? The workers don't know. The priest shrugs. A servant's child, perhaps, or one born in silence. But silence, you know now, is never empty. You take the doll in your hand. Its limbs are jointed, the paint long faded, yet it bears the imprint of use, tiny teeth marks on the edge, the thread at the arm carefully restitched. Someone loved her, enough to give her this, enough to bury her gently. You close your eyes, and you remember the boy with no voice. You remember the woman in white linen. You remember the names written on broken pottery, offered up in ritual, names spoken once and lost. You open your eyes, and you write, "Here lies a child, wrapped in the dust of forgotten songs. She was loved. Let that be her name." You seal the scroll with red ink, fold it carefully, hand it to the priest. He hesitates, looks at you, then back. "She will be remembered," he says. But when you leave the tomb, you cannot breathe. The wind outside is hot and dry. The sand stings your eyes, but you stay there, standing by the broken stone, until the workers finish sealing the chamber, until the last stone is placed. That night, back in your chamber, you write her name again. Not the one she was given, the one you gave. Loved. You write it 3 times. Then you light a lamp, hold the scroll above its flame, and let it burn slowly. Not to erase it, but to send it skyward. Smoke curls like ink into the ceiling, and somewhere in the darkness, you feel a small hand rest in yours. Light, but certain. The wind was dry that morning, dry enough to crack lips and parch ink before it dried. The palace scribes whispered of omens, though no one named them aloud. You had risen early before the lamps were lit, your body already aching from the weight of words yet unwritten. There was a scroll you had begun the night before. It had not been assigned. It had not been ordered. It was something else. Something raw. A testimony, perhaps. Or a wound. You had written it in secret, long after the corridors had emptied. Seated at your desk with the lamp turned low, your brush had moved faster than your thoughts. The lines spilled from you like fevered breath. It told of a priest, highborn, revered, a man wrapped in gold and ritual, but the scroll did not speak of his titles or prayers. It told of what he did behind temple walls, of those he silenced, of the boy with bruises, of the girl with no name. You wrote what you knew, and what had been whispered. You sealed the scroll and hid it beneath a loose tile behind your stool. You did not sleep. By morning you could not meet the eyes of the other scribes. Even the ink beneath your fingernails seemed darker, heavier. You planned to bring it to the librarian, quietly, not with accusation, but with record. Not as vengeance, but as proof. But when you returned to your chamber that evening, the air smelled wrong. Not of ink, not of oil, of ash. The scroll was gone. Only a dark smear remained on the stone. A curve of charred reed, a patch of blackened soot, where parchment had once lain. You knelt there, fingers pressed to the burn, still warm. No alarm had been sounded, no questions asked. The palace is good at hiding fire. You did not cry. You sat in silence until the stars emerged above the courtyard. You heard the wind outside whispering across the stone, carrying voices that no longer had names. Then a sound, soft, a tap at the door. You opened it. The boy with no voice stood there. He held out his hand. In it, a single word, scrawled onto a shard of broken pottery. Remember. You took it, held it like a sacred thing. He nodded once and disappeared into the night. You sat at your desk, unrolled fresh papyrus, and wrote it again. Not the whole story. Not yet. But the first line. You buried it beneath a different scroll. A harvest record, innocent, unquestioned. And in the corner of the parchment, small enough to escape notice, you drew a symbol, a flame. Later that week, the priest in question was honored at a temple ceremony, gold draped across his shoulders, perfume on his hands. He never looked in your direction, but you looked at him, and you remembered. That night, you dreamed of scrolls, hundreds of them burning, rising, carried not by fire, but by breath. And each carried a word, not vengeance, not justice, just memory, as sharp as smoke, as soft as ash. She arrives without ceremony. A slip of shadow in the corridor, a whisper of paw against stone. You notice her first during an afternoon storm. The sky bruised and low, the scent of rain slipping in through the shutters. She does not meow. She does not blink. She simply appears. A temple cat. Small, slender, fur the color of ash rubbed in bronze. Her ears are tattered at the edges, as though time has bitten them. She walks with the confidence of someone who has never once been told no. You find her curled on your scroll shelf. Asleep, one paw draped over a decree you had yet to seal. You approach. She opens one eye. It gleams, yellow. Knowing, you should shoo her away, but you do not. You stroke her back once, and she purrs. Not a soft sound, but a low, rumbling pulse, like the earth remembering its name. That evening she follows you. Past the courtyard, down the servants' stair, into the lower levels where only the oldest scrolls are kept. You've walked these halls before, but not this far, not this deep. The torch in your hand flickers. The walls grow narrow, down, still. The cat walks ahead, unafraid. She leads you to a door you've never seen, half hidden by collapsed plaster and a leaning column. You push it open. It groans, as if startled awake. Inside, darkness, and then breath. A breath, not yours, not wind, something deeper, older. You step forward. The cat vanishes into the black. Your torch catches the edge of a table, and then, beyond it, rows of shelves. Not like the others. These are built into the stone, sealed behind thin panels of glass, and on them, scrolls, hundreds, maybe thousands. But one draws your eye, larger than the rest, bound in twine, heavy with wax. It bears your name, not your scribe's mark, not the signature you were assigned, your true name, the one you wrote when you first arrived. You unbind the scroll, hands trembling. The wax peels away like old skin. You unroll it. The ink is fresh, too fresh. The scroll is not a record. It is a future, a story you have not yet lived. It tells of your arrival, of the boy with no voice, the woman in white linen, the child in the tomb, the fire, and then the next lines. Unwritten, blank space, waiting. You step back. The scroll slips from your fingers. The cat sits on the table now, tail curled around her paws. Watching, she blinks once, then twice. You whisper, "Did I write this?" She stretches, yawns, hops down, walks away. You follow her back through the door, up the stairs, back into the flickering light of the scriptorium. You do not sleep that night. You unroll fresh papyrus. You write nothing. You only stare, and you wonder, if the scroll exists before you live it, are you living at all? Or only writing what was always meant to be? The next day, the scroll is gone. So is the cat. But the hairs she left behind still cling to your robe. Soft, gold, silent. Proof that something watched you, something saw, and something, perhaps, still wait. His space is empty. The small stool beside yours, always scattered with fragments of scroll, broken reeds, half-finished glyphs, is bare now, the floor swept too clean. The lamp he trimmed each morning has gone out, not burned down, removed, as if the boy had never existed at all. But you remember the press of his finger against your palm, the way his gestures shaped silence into meaning, the way his eyes laughed before his hands caught up. You remember the prayer he gave you, the one he wrote in a hand steadier than his age should have allowed, and now, gone. No one says where he's gone. When you ask the high scribe, his lips tighten. Transferred, he says, to a higher calling. To where? No answer. The other scribes look away. The cook avoids your eyes. You begin to search in silence. First, in the temples, the ones closest to the palace. You ask in the only way you can, with offerings, with questions wrapped in courtesy, but no one speaks of a boy, especially not one who cannot speak for himself. Then, the archives. You unroll scrolls by the dozens, records of apprentices reassigned, oracles chosen, pages marked only by initials, by fragments. You look for a symbol, At last you find something, a single line in a scroll of appointments. He who speaks through silence shall serve beneath the veil. You know what it means. He has been chosen to be the next mouthpiece of the divine, a living oracle, a vessel through which the gods are said to speak. It is an honor, and a cage. Once veiled, he will no longer write, no longer laugh, no longer be seen without ceremony. He will become something sacred, untouchable, alone. You return to your chamber. The air is still, heavy. You sit at your desk and unroll a fresh scroll, and you write, not a record, not a decree, a story, his story. You begin with the first day he sat beside you, ink smudged on his cheek. You write of how he taught you to listen, to watch, to wait. You describe his hands, the way they danced when he signed, the way they trembled when he laughed. You write the words he never said aloud. You write the names he never gave you. You write until the lamp dies and the ink runs dry. Then you fold the scroll, not to store it, but to hide it. You slip it between the pages of an official tax record, a scroll so dull, no one will look too closely. You leave a mark in the corner. A small drawing, a bird with its beak closed. He is not a god, he is a boy. He was a boy, and you will not let the ink forget that. That night, you dream of him. He stands on a dais, draped in linen, face painted gold. He opens his mouth, and speaks, not with voice, not with sign, but with light. The stars flicker, the river stills. You wake with tears on your cheeks, and a single word echoing in your chest. Free. The sky is never entirely dark in this place. Even at night it glows, faintly with the after-breath of the sun, with dust drifting through eternity, with memories older than time itself. But tonight, something shifts. You feel it before you see it. A stillness. Not silence. Stillness. As if every creature in the land has drawn a single breath and refused to let it go. The priests step outside their temples. Workers climb to rooftops. Mothers pull their children into their arms. You follow the procession to the palace terrace. The air is electric. Even the guards forget their stillness, glancing upward with narrowed eyes. And then, it begins. The first star falls like a whisper, a thin trail of white, delicate as a prayer, left unspoken. Then another, and another. The heavens shatter in silence. Dozens, then hundreds of stars raining across the black. Some streak in silver, others glow red, green, gold. 1,000 arrows of light, 1,000 forgotten names returning to earth. Someone gasps, someone prays, someone cries. You say nothing, because something within you is listening. And you hear it, not with your ears, with your chest. The stars are speaking. You retreat from the crowd, back into the palace, down to the room where you keep your blank scrolls. You light a lamp. Your hand trembles, and you begin to write. Not poetry, not prophecy. You write what you see, what you feel, what you remember without knowing why. You draw the arc of each falling star, noting their color, their shape, the moment they vanish. You write a name beside each one, not the names of gods or nobles, but names that rise in your chest unbidden. Sasti, Yanan, the boy with the doll, the woman who was not real. You write until your hand aches. until the wax of the lamp gives out, and the darkness surrounds you again. When you finally rest your head against the cool stone, you feel watched, but not by the guards, not by the scribes, by the stars themselves. They are quiet now, but not gone. In the morning, Amenhotep finds you. The old man walks slower now, his eyes dimmed but steady. He sits beside you, takes the scroll from your hands, reads without speaking. At last he says, "I have seen this night 3 times in my life. Each time, it changed the way men prayed." You look at him. "I just wrote what I saw." He nods, smiles, faintly. "But you saw what most cannot." He leaves you with a final sentence. "You've always been here." It echoes in your ears long after he's gone. That night, you climb the palace steps, alone. The stars are gone. The sky is quiet, but you feel them still, in the ink drying on your fingers, in the silence wrapped around your throat, and in the scroll tucked close to your chest, filled with names you've never spoken, but somehow always know. You awaken before the sun, stirred not by sound, but by a presence, a weightless pull behind the ribs, like a hand brushing your shoulder without touch. The lamp beside you has gone out, the wax curled in its dish, hardened and spent. A fresh scroll waits on your desk, but not one you left there. The papyrus is tightly rolled, sealed with no wax, only a thread, knotted in a pattern you don't recognize. You study it in the half-light. Something about the texture, the edge of the fibers. You've touched this before. Your hands remember before your mind does. You unroll it slowly, with breath held still. Your name appears at the top, not your scribe's mark, your full name, the one you wrote on your first day, the one that never felt quite yours, until now. Below it, a story begins. It is your story. Line for line, word for word. The day you woke on the reed mat. The first time you dipped a reed into black ink. The man who measured the stars. The scroll, made from bone. The mute boy's prayer. The child with no name. The fire. Every moment. Each described in the same hand you use each day. But you have no memory of writing this. The lines are identical. Even your mistakes. Your breath hitches as you reach the final portion. A chapter titled, "The Night the Stars Fell." You read each sentence slowly, watching yourself relive it. The falling stars. The scroll of names. Amenhotep's words. And then nothing. The scroll stops mid-sentence. Ink ends abruptly. No line break. No seal. No closing mark. Just a blank expanse of papyrus. You stare at it. Your fingers twitch. There is room for more. Enough for another chapter. Perhaps 2. Perhaps 10. Your heart drums in your ears. You reach for your pen. You hesitate. What happens if you write here? Will it become truth? Or is it already written somewhere else? And you are only catching up. You remember what Amenhotep once told you. What we write becomes. But what if what becomes writes you in return? You rise from your desk and walk the quiet corridors of the palace. The sun has not yet risen, but the halls glow faintly with pre-dawn blue. The guards do not stop you. The scribes do not stir. You descend the long stairs, back to the vault, where the forbidden scrolls sleep. You carry the unfinished one in your hands, and when you enter, it feels as though the air itself holds its breath. You move past the shelves, past the sealed jars, past the bones of forgotten gods. There is a place here, an alcove, where the scrolls do not rest on stone, but on sand. You kneel. You place your scroll among them. You do not add another word. Not yet. Instead you whisper, "I am still becoming," and leave the rest blank. You walk away without looking back. Because not every story has an ending. Some are still waiting. Some are written only when the soul is ready. And some write you while you sleep. The wind stirs before the dawn. A soft murmur through the corridor, curling beneath your robe, brushing the parchment on your desk. It smells of dust and grain, of wet stone and distant river, of change. You are summoned once again, but not to the palace, not to the archive, to the scriptorium. Back to the beginning. The house of life feels smaller now, as if it has aged in your absence. The floor creaks more, the walls breathe slower, even the lamps seem dimmer, like old eyes reluctant to stay open. You step into the chamber where you first wrote your name. That borrowed name. The head scribe waits. He is older than stone, his face unmoving, his eyes sunk deep into hollows of shadow. He gestures to the table without a word. Laid out before you, fresh papyrus, fine-grained, pale as bone, the kind reserved for sacred rites, for tomb. You will write, he says, the record of your passage, your final scroll, your own memory. No decree, no temple hymn, no edited truth, only you. You take your seat, the same one as before. The wood creaks beneath your weight, familiar and unfamiliar at once. You dip the reed, black ink. No red today. The brush hovers over the papyrus. You hesitate. What is your name? You wrote it once. You copied it 1,000 times. But it never felt yours. Not fully. It was given, assigned, not earned. You set down the reed, and instead, you begin with the names of others. The boy with no voice. The one who taught you to listen. The woman in white linen. Her words a ripple in your bones. Don't forget me. The child buried in sand. She was loved. You write their names in full. Slowly, with reverence. Then the man who measured stars, who saw time in constellations and knew the sky whispered. You write the scroll that burned, the memory that wouldn't. You write the girl with the doll, the cat who knew too much, the silence that watched you write. One by one, they fill the scroll. Their names, their stories, their echoes, and only at the end, only when the ink is nearly gone, do you write yours. Not the one you were given, not the one they used, but the name that has waited behind your ribs since the moment you awoke, the one that has no translation, no title, only breath. You write it, and the wind answers. A soft exhale through the cracks in the stone, a hush through the reeds outside, a recognition. You place the reed down, the ink dries, the scroll curls faintly at the edges, as if folding inward. The head scribe returns. He does not read it, he does not need to. He bows, just slightly, and says, "It is done." You hand it over, but it does not feel like loss. It feels like release. You walk through the scriptorium, one last time, past the shelves, the brushes, the jars of pigment. You touch the walls, you feel them breathe. Outside, the wind stirs the dust, carries it east, toward the river, toward the sun, and you follow it, with no name, but with every name you've written carried in your steps. They do not build you a tomb. No pyramid rises. No priest carves your story into limestone. There is no golden mask, no amulets pressed into your hands, no chance to guide you into the afterlife. And yet, you do not vanish. You are remembered, but not in the way kings are. Your scroll is sealed, rolled tight, wrapped in linen, marked not with your name, but with a symbol, a single inked breath, a curl of wind, a curve of silence. It is not placed in a vault, not stored in a temple. It is set among the shelves of the house of life, slipped gently between a merchant's grain record and an unfinished hymn to the moon, hidden, but not lost. It rests there in the darkness, among the brittle memories of those who lived without statues, who loved without titles, who were known by their words, not their monuments. The priest who carries it there does not speak. He wears no colour. His hands are steady. When he sets it down, he murmurs the only line required. As long as ink exists, so does the soul. Then he steps back and leaves. You are not mourned with wailing. You are not honoured with procession. But somewhere, in the quiet hours before the first brush touches parchment, a scribe lifts your scroll, feels the weight of it, smells the old ink, reads the first line, and lingers. They do not know your face, but they know your voice. They know the woman in white linen. They know the boy with no voice. They know the stars that fell, the names you wrote in secret, the fire that erased nothing. They do not need to read your name to know you, because you are written in the gaps, in the spaces between prayers, in the margins beside the decrees, in the pause before the reed touches ink. You are not buried, you are shelved, wrapped in breath, held in silence, and the scroll waits, as all scrolls do, not to be remembered, but to be read. To be opened by someone whose hand will tremble as yours once did, to be read aloud beneath a low flame, to live again. You are not stone, you are not gold. You are ink, and ink endures. You awaken to light, not the harsh blaze of the desert sun, nor the flicker of oil lamps over parchment. A softer light, diffuse, modern. The scent of paper fills your lungs, clean and chemical, not like papyrus but bleached pulp and faint glue. There is a desk, a pen, a window, but no river, no reed mat, no inkstone or God to witness. You are not in Egypt, not in the scriptorium, and yet you are. The memory is not dreamlike, it is bone deep. The weight of the reed in your fingers, the rasp of stone under your sandals, the ache in your wrist after a full day of transcription. You remember every line you wrote, every name you recorded, and most of all, you remember the silence. It lives behind your ribs still. You glance at the desk before you. On it lies a notebook, plain, spiral-bound, pages blank. Beside it, a pen, black ink. You lift it, and you write, not because someone told you to, not because you were chosen, because you must. The words come slowly but surely. You write of the boy who never spoke, the woman who asked to be remembered, the priest whose cruelty burned, the child buried beneath the sand, the cat who knew your story before you did. You write not for history, but for present, to honor the names that once slipped through cracks in time, to give voice to those who had none. And as you write, something stirs, a flicker in the corner of your eye, a ripple in the curtain. You turn, and for a breathless moment, you see her, wrapped in linen, weaving, the woman in white. She does not speak, she only nods, and vanishes. You lower your pen, your hand shakes, but you are not afraid, because you understand now. Time does not end. It circles, it folds, it waits, and sometimes it writes itself into a. Your name may be forgotten, but your ink is not. It lives in the words passed down, copied by hands that will never know yours, read by eyes that will never meet yours. But still, it lives, and in that, you endure, as scribe, as witness, as breath drawn in silence, and released as memory, as the last line fades into the hush of your room. Thank you for walking this winding path. If this journey stayed with you, let it echo beyond. Subscribe, return, and rest again among the stories inked into time. Tell me in the comments which name stayed with you the longest. As the last line fades into silence, may you carry its echo into your own quiet hours. If this journey stirred something ancient in you, something nameless, I invite you to return, to wander again among the forgotten scrolls. Subscribe if you wish to walk once more through the sleep-stained sands of memory. What part of this story stayed with you the most? Would you write the truth, even if no one could ever read it? Could you live your life in silence, if your words outlived empires?